Welcome to your epic pursuit. I'm Mike Mooney. So glad you're here. This is a space for us to dive into inspiring and real conversations with people to explore their journeys around leadership and performance. The conversation is going to go through our flow of epic, which is excellence, presence, intentionality, and curiosity. And you're going to pick up on those threads and themes throughout the conversation here today. And the goal, quite honestly, is very simple. We just want to equip you, empower you with tools and resources, ideas and frameworks that can help accelerate your journey. Now, today I'm very excited to have our guest, Phil Alexander. Phil is the CEO of the Pragmatic Institute, but truth be told, he was also a client of mine when I was very young in my agency career years ago. Learned so much from him over the years. And Phil, I can't tell you how excited I am to have you here today.
Thanks, Mike. So good to see you again. I think of our old experiences very fondly. I think it shaped a lot of my career too. So
Well,
good to see you again. Yeah.
I appreciate that, and it certainly did for me as well. Early on, as I was kind of forming and learning the ideas of brand and marketing and communications, you were an amazing resource back in the day. So that was back when you were running advertising and marketing for Western Auto and Sears Roebuck. I know then your career then branched over to Pearl Vision, where you were working running advertising and brand for them for many years before launching out and starting Brand Muscle, which was your first, I believe, your first step into entrepreneurship when you were moving along. Is that accurate?
Reasonably so. Yeah. I had done
Reasonably,
something once before, but this was my real big one. Yeah.
the real big one. So
Yeah.
so that ran, gosh, 20 years, 18, 20 years, right? That you were with Brand Muscle.
I was there for 18 years. Yeah.
I love it. Love it. And then transitioned over when you were recruited into for the CEO role at Pragmatic Institute. So as I think about the threads and themes in that time, Phil, it's really, to me, you've always had a vision and you've had to always sort of find and cast a vision. I guess that's no, like, pun intended for Pearl. But really, I mean, you've always struck me as someone who had a vision and was able to then take that and bring it to life, like to truly understand how do you build the plan, assemble the team, have the right people in place, the leadership, the resources that can then bring an idea, a vision to life. So, um, again, that's always been my perspective on you, and I would imagine, for what you're doing with Pragmatic Institute, a lot of that is of value and benefit to your team there too.
Yeah. I mean, without a doubt, I think even back to the days when we worked together, I think, it was fascinating. I joined Sears and, every time I tried to do something, I was a 20-something-year-old head of marketing, and I don't have to tell you how tough it was in the Sears environment where everybody had been around for a while. And, every time I try to do something different, people would say, "It ain't broke, Phil."
Mm.
And my reaction, so finally I ended up and I had the entire floor in the building that was advertising and marketing people, and I put up a banner over the holidays. So when people came back after Christmas, the sign said, "If it ain't broke, break it." Right? And it said, "If it goes fast, make it go faster."
Yeah.
If it's big, make it bigger. And I forget what the third one was. And I called everybody in and I said, "Listen, guys, you know, we, the reason we're here is because the reason they brought me in is because things aren't as they should be. And so let's not be afraid of trying something different, but let's not do anything, right? Let's never say it ain't broke." And so that's always been my philosophy. And I've surrounded myself with people who are excited to do something different and something new. And that's tough sometimes because, if you've built the model and you've built the mold,
Yeah.
to come back a couple of years later and say, "I'm going to break the model and I'm going to break the mold and try something else,"
Yeah.
it's hard to do.
Well, to get that buy-in, I'm sure, and some of that can be forced upon us, right? Sometimes it's an itch or it's a gut feeling of a, hey, it's time to, pivot or flex a little bit. That's more of an internal drive. But then there are moments, I'm sure, externally or in the market where you were forced, where you literally have to change the model, break some things in order to find a better way to go to market.
Yeah, I think COVID did that to a lot of people.
Yeah,
That was a
that's
model
true.
that most people weren't ready to have to accept or have to change
Yeah.
from. So yeah,
Yeah,
good
100%.
example.
100%. Well, so during the let's look at, maybe COVID's not the right time frame for this, but the question I'd love to start with to get your thoughts and your experience is, was there a bold decision? Was there a decision that you had to make for the company, or maybe it was for yourself, right? That people questioned. You're like, oh, I don't know that's going to work out. I don't know that's going to play out the way you think it is, or maybe even yourself
Yeah.
saying, I don't know, but ultimately it did, or maybe it didn't, but it transformed the way that you went about leadership. Because sometimes we can learn the greatest lessons from the greatest setbacks, right? So I'm just curious about a time you had to really go with a decision, and how did it change your leadership?
Interesting question. I think I'll go to probably brand muscle in the early years,
Mhm.
new company starting out, every client is precious, worth its weight in gold.
Yeah.
And so we had a few clients, and our top two clients accounted for something like 60, 70% of our revenue, right? So, you have to be super careful. The business is thriving, it's fragile, but a handful of clients are a big part of your revenue.
Yeah.
And so to lose even one could be a serious problem. So in this particular case, we had a client who was getting to be pretty toxic, to be quite honest, right?
Mhm.
And so we tried to manage them, we tried to talk to them, but then we tried our best.
Yeah.
And I had really good account execs working on the with that client, and but they constantly berated them. And one day I was actually going to my son's basketball game, and I was getting ready to leave, and I got a call from this account exec who I truly believed in, and she said to me, she was in tears, and she said, "I've just, been through another tough meeting, and I just don't know that I can continue." So I decided I'd give a call, and we tried many times to talk to them.
Yeah.
So I called my key stakeholder on the client side, and I said, "Hey, look, this is what's happening. What can we do?" And he said to me, "We pay you. We'll treat your employees any way we want, right?"
Oh,
And
wow.
this was an important client.
Yeah.
I knew it too.
Yeah.
They knew we were relatively young.
Yep.
Gone to them saying this was a beta. I knew that if I were to do anything stupid, they'd put the business at risk. But then on the other hand,
Yeah.
you asked what, lesson that I learned that changed my leadership. I decided I was going to fire a client. So that day I fired a client, you
Wow.
know, and I said to them, we aren't going to work with you anymore because those are not the values we believe in.
Mm.
I mean, and things were rough.
Yeah.
Right after that, stakes were incredibly high, but everybody pitched in. We didn't fire anyone. We didn't lose anybody.
Yeah.
And we were extremely fortunate because we actually got a piece of business right after. But
Mm.
the impact was immediate. Employees felt valued. They felt protected,
Yeah.
right? They felt respected.
Yeah.
Morale surged. Loyalty intensified. And our team knew that we were committed to them
Yeah.
much more over revenue. And so that was the thing I learned, that was betting on culture over cash.
Mm.
Right. So if there was a lesson that I learned early, it was bet on your people, bet on culture, and it'll be easy for you to say, I'm going to go for cash. But authentic leadership means that you're going to stand for the values that you have, especially if the stakes are highest. That's when everyone's looking at you to say, are, are your values really true? Right.
Yeah, or Phil, are you gonna walk the talk right now?
Right.
Right?
Right.
Or are we gonna
Yeah.
get more of this?
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I learned that, doing that, I never lost people. We won more awards, Mike, than anybody else for community. We didn't lose anybody. Our turnover rate was something like 3%. And it was because people moved more than anything else. Back then, you didn't do things remotely.
Right.
But I learned that if you have your teams back, they'll go to incredible lengths for you.
Yeah.
So I think so you asked, what bold decision, my investors are saying, really, is that a smart move? You're going to give up
Right.
that much revenue. How are you going to make it up? And I said, let's go against the grain. Let's bet on culture
Hmm.
over short-term cash. Let's look at long-term instead of short-term. And it
Yeah.
paid off.
It clearly did, and I can only imagine that the opposite would have happened if you had chosen cash over the culture. Then you would have been scrambling to replace people. The culture, you would have eroded, pulled, cut, decimated people's
Well, Mike, I
belief.
think we had maybe 16 or 17 employees at the time, right?
Yeah. Yeah.
And so the message would have been super clear. Everyone knows what you
Yes.
did,
Yep.
right? And even if you had more people and no one knew, you still have to be able to look at yourself in the mirror.
Absolutely.
So, so I think you're absolutely right. It's a startup, and
Yeah.
people go, "Hey, this is riskier than I thought. Maybe I should find something more stable." And this will, on the other hand, we went from 16 people to 800 people over the years. So, and most of this person,
So
by the way, was there
yeah,
at the end when I left.
really.
Yeah.
So I was gonna ask and say, how long did that person stay? Because I would have to think that they would have ridden all the way to the edge.
I think she was there for about 15 or 16 years.
Yeah.
I left in year 18. I think she was there for 16 and she became a director or vice president of the company eventually. And she left for personal reasons.
Yeah.
But yeah,
I mean, I love that story, and especially that phrase, "culture over cash." Bet on that every time. I mean, talk about when leaders talk about excellence and naming what excellence is. I'm a big believer that too many times there are like great words on a wall that leaders like to people to read, but we've got to make sure that we're bringing them to life and being intentional with when we're doing it, right? So
believing in it.
yeah, I mean, and believing it, living it, like putting it on the line to say, this is how much we believe in this. And I'm not surprised then that people pitched in and, we're getting new business as a result after that. That is a
Yeah.
great story, Phil. So building on that, I'm sure that there were times too when the organization was running fast, maybe hitting a wall, maybe it was with innovation, maybe it was with culture, maybe it was with business. But maybe, is there a time when you all were hitting a wall that you took maybe a bit of an unconventional approach that actually led to a breakthrough for the team? Something that, people would think, well, surely we're going to do the traditional route, but you came in with something a little bit different and it led to that breakthrough?
I'm sure a lot of people on your podcast have talked about COVID, but and so I hate to do that. But
No, no,
so
it's
COVID was a forced wall that we had to run into. So let me
yeah.
go back to where we were. So now, when COVID hit, I was at Pragmatic Institute, and I was the
Mm,
CEO. And for those in the audience who don't know, Pragmatic Institute provides training, and as the lead, 94% of all new products fail. And they fail because no one understands what the market's asking for. Pragmatic helps you figure that out. So they're in the business of product management training. And we did all our training in mostly Fortune 500 companies in person. So we'd go there, we'd physically present to them. Well, I don't have to tell you what COVID did. COVID shut us down. We lost on March 14th or whatever that infamous day was. I
yeah,
think we lost something like 98% of our revenue. And so you lose 98% of your revenue. Your PE owned,
yeah.
and they're looking at it and saying, well, shouldn't we cut back? And, what do we do? It was the management team was relatively new in those roles and had never had a crisis of this sort. So the most obvious thing to do is to say, okay, I've been around. I'm more experienced than anybody. I'm going to step in and let's go. I decided that the right thing to do was go the opposite way.
Okay.
So I said to everybody, I said, okay, we're going to save this company, but it's going to be you who's going to save the company. So the whole idea was to empower decisions from the ground up. So as you said, stagnation.
Yeah.
It could be stagnation, it could be lack of innovation, it could be an execution change, something like that. But at that point, we said, what if we empowered? I said, what if we empowered the leadership team to actually make the key strategic decisions that you're looking at the leader to do. And I said, I'm going to step back. I'll ask the questions. I'll help make the decisions, but you guys have to come up with the answers, right?
Wow.
And and you own it, right?
So,
And
so you're
so
asking them that this is in a normal environment, Phil. This idea alone would rock people's worlds. Let alone saying we're going to do this in the midst of a global pandemic when 98% of your business is evaporated in a short period of time, and now you're saying we want you all to be part of that solution. So how did
exactly right. So and what I saw was the team was just energized by kind of this added autonomy and the trust that we had in them,
yeah.
and they created solutions that I don't think they would have otherwise envisioned, right? And so, I call it operational inertia. So you can say, I want to do this, but they're like, I don't know, it doesn't seem like it'll work. Do you know, we came up with a plan that said, here's week 1, week 2, week 3, week 4. Here's what happens when COVID goes away, which of course we thought was going away by Memorial Day weekend,
Right, right,
but it,
right.
it
This
did
is
not.
this is
So
gonna
we
be
never
torture.
executed the last part of the plan, which is what happens when COVID's over, right?
Yeah,
But
yeah,
interestingly, because everybody was, so really the whole thing was, it was a shift from command and control to empowerment and autonomy.
yeah.
So you're saying, I'm going to trust you, even though you might be less experienced. When the organization is in a moment of crisis, I want to see if you'll step up, right? And I'll ask the questions. So if you come up with a solution, I'll ask the questions as the person who's had the experience.
Mm,
And when they need to make a decision, I'm perfectly comfortable making the decision,
yeah.
but you'll come up with the answers to the questions I ask, right?
Mm.
And do you know something? You know what happened? Do you know in 90 days we were EBITDA positive?
And
90 days.
90 days.
Yeah. We
Unbelievable.
made up our revenue. We changed our model. So I'll give you an example of what people did. Didn't matter what their title was, Mike.
Yeah.
People had signed up for classes for the next few months, right?
Yep.
And so we were going to be in, let's say, in San Diego. We were going to be in Charlotte and so on.
Yep.
Everybody had signed up. Didn't matter what your title was. We rolled up our sleeves and people called them and said, hey, listen, because of COVID, we can't be in Charlotte. We can't be in New York. We can't be in LA. Would you mind taking a virtual class? And the instructors and the tech team and the product team, they all converted our classes to virtual classes. And we convinced everybody to take the classes virtually with instructors
Yep.
doing the instruction.
Yeah.
And 90 days later, we had completely converted the company. Now, all of a sudden, guess what? Our market size was actually larger
I bet.
because people in Uzbekistan and Azerbaijan could now take a class because before it was too expensive to fly to New York.
Right.
And so we actually ended up doing better as a result of it.
Unreal.
But it was 90 days, and I give all of it to the management team. But it was because they were empowered to go get it done.
Well, and they were empowered to get it done, but the other part of it that I don't want to be lost in this, because my God, to within 90 days of a global pandemic, to have 98% of your business evaporate, but then 90 days later come back and be EBITDA positive, and shifting culture and autonomy. But what I don't want to lose in there is something you said that is so powerful for leaders. When you said, I'm going to ask the questions, but you're going to come up with the answers. Like you saddled up with them. You didn't just say, yeah, go make the decisions and we'll see what happens. Where some leaders will just kind of abdicate and say, okay, it's autonomous. You said, no, we're going to do it together, but I'm not going to give you the answer. I'm going to ask you the questions to get you thinking. That'll lead you to the
Mike,
right answer.
absolutely right. But you know what else happened? We thought of ourselves. So back to your question was, there's stagnation, things aren't happening.
Yeah.
How do you get new innovation and how do you get things moving?
Yep.
We decided we were like a startup. So you know what we did? Since we couldn't get in the office, we did a stand up every morning.
Mm,
And the first week we had a stand up every morning and every evening at the end of the day, right? Because things were moving so rapidly.
yeah.
And we became, as a management team, more able to respond. And there were no more barriers because you can't say sales didn't do it and I'm waiting on them because you had a call and sales was there this morning.
Yeah.
And so was marketing and so was ops and so was product,
Yep.
So things started to move rapidly and we needed to move rapidly at this point in time,
Yeah.
much more rapidly than we were accustomed to. And the only way to change that was to break all our habits.
Mm,
And so about 6 months into it, I said to the team, I said, okay, look, we're meeting every morning, and things have settled down and we know what to do. Why don't we go to Monday, Wednesdays, and Fridays? And the team said, no, we want to meet every day.
wow.
And now, 7 years later, we meet every morning. Or
Amazing.
5 years since COVID. Yeah.
Amazing.
Yeah.
Amazing. That
So
that
it
that is
changes.
no, I mean, but that is an amazing case study on, the leadership, innovation, team, autonomy. I mean, all of these key elements of resources, the intentional communication that you had in those mornings and afternoons, and how that became part of the culture. You know
Yeah.
how it also it breaks down barriers and silos. You know, where I worked at a place where something went wrong, people would just go, "Well, it was them. It wasn't me." Well, that
Yeah.
person's right there next to you. Have the conversation. We're here. Let's talk about it. You
Yeah,
know.
transparency is so important. Yeah, I'm sure every CFO will shudder when they hear this, but every Friday, and I did it at Brand Muscle, and I
Mhm.
do it at Pragmatic. Every Friday, I have an all hands.
Yeah.
Now, if you do the math on it, and you say, if
Mhm.
it's half an hour and you got 100 people in it, and they cost me $20 an hour or $40 an hour,
Right.
times 100 people,
Yeah.
every week that's $4,000 times 5 weeks is $200,000 that we're
Yeah.
tossing, right?
Yeah.
But the importance of having everybody understand and share best
Mhm.
things that they're doing is so valuable to us. At Pragmatic, my instructors might be teaching, but in my non-instructor group,
Mhm.
it's now virtual, right? That we meet every Friday.
Yeah.
I think we have 85 to 90% attendance
That's
at,
great.
in a virtual Zoom meeting every Friday.
Yeah.
Because if you really believe that, if you want them to believe this is their company, then you have to share with them what's going on in the company, what's happening in sales, what customer we lost and why we lost him. A research study, a win loss that was done, right? And
Yeah.
here's what they said. Here's a client who said we won them because of this. Kudos. And we share a lot of kudos.
Yeah.
But we also say, hey, we lost this client because of this. And we're going to, as a management team, we're going to sit down and figure out how that doesn't happen again.
That's right.
We do that every week.
Yeah.
And we are in front of the whole company, sharing out our business and where we are.
It's so
We talk
important.
about pipeline. We talk about
Yeah.
everything.
Yeah.
So,
It's so important because that builds the connection up and down the
yeah,
line, without a
yeah,
doubt. Without a doubt. Phil, one last question for you here, and
sure.
this gets back to, I mean, you've had so many amazing experiences in leadership seats during this journey. Sure, there's a lot that you've picked up over the years in terms of leadership principles and how you go about leading. And I'm curious though, is there a principle that you've picked up along the way that's maybe a little unconventional, a little different than most, that's really served you well, or maybe continues to deliver results for you?
I think if I were to ask the people who worked for me, worked with me, that I might have supervised or were peers in the executive team, I think all of them will tell you that the one thing that made me possibly different than others was,
Mhm.
I didn't think I had to be infallible. I didn't have to be the CEO who knew everything. It
Mm,
was fine to be vulnerable,
yeah,
right? If my granddaughter runs in here and we're on a Zoom, I'll allow her to be on Zoom, right?
great.
Or if
That's
someone's
great.
dog shows up, their dog shows up,
Yeah,
right?
yeah,
Real life is in play, and I actually think that you don't always have to project strength. You can admit that you don't have all the answers. I think admitting that actually strengthens your leadership, right? So I think conventional wisdom, the myth of the infallible CEO is if you're vulnerable, you lose it. But I think if you show that vulnerability or ability to ask questions and not always provide answers, I think you actually create more authenticity. You
right.
provide deeper trust,
Yeah.
and you're one of the group. You're with them. I'm with you. So
Yeah, you are human. You are human,
yeah, you're
and
human, right?
and that's
So
actually like the C of curiosity in the epic framework is truly about wisdom hunting and not ego stroking, which is what a
yeah,
lot of times leaders will do when they're in these situations. Let me tell you what's right and how it's right and why I'm right, instead of asking questions and bringing people into the conversation. I couldn't agree anymore. I'm with you. I think that vulnerability has gotten a bad rap over the years, as being a sign of weakness. But
right.
truly, if a leader's willing to be vulnerable and be seen, I believe that they're going to gain so much more respect from the people and their team, their clients, the folks around. Like, I don't know, right? I don't know the answer yet, but I'll get back to you. Or, hey, Phil, let
Yeah,
me ask
right.
you for your input on this. What have you seen, right? So it's about wisdom seeking and that.
Yeah, Mike, the vulnerability doesn't have to be all work related. You can also just show yourself as being just like you. I'll give you an example.
Yeah.
When I was at Brand Muscle, our Cleveland office was a big office, and I happen to be, and your audience is going to groan and moan when I say this, but I'm a Cleveland Browns fan. And so you
Well, they're
should
probably
really feel
groaning.
you should feel very sorry for me.
Right, I was just say they're groaning for you, not for
Oh,
any other
okay.
reason.
But
Yeah,
it tells you that I'm a very loyal person and I've stayed loyal to them. And and in Cleveland we got a lot of Steelers fans, and you know how the Browns and Steelers hate
yeah,
each other.
yeah.
Well, even though I know I'll lose, every time there's going to be a Browns Steelers game, I bet that if the Steelers win, I'll make pancakes for everybody. For 8 years in a row, I made pancakes. Twice a year. So
But
you
you
can be
love it too.
personally, you can be vulnerable
You
too, and
can
it's
be.
okay.
Yeah, that's awesome. I'm glad it wasn't like a tattoo or a
No,
haircut
no,
or
I
something
wouldn't go that
crazy.
far.
You know,
Yeah,
that
just a few pounds.
that is fantastic. That is great. Phil, this has been again. I knew this was going to be a great conversation, just from the years of knowing you and following you. But the takeaways here on on culture over cash, right? Then the idea of being able to re-engage your team, take your team from absolute crisis, the rock bottom, but by saddling up next to them, bringing them in, giving them the opportunity to come up with solutions, empowering them to make decisions within structure and framework as a leader should do, right? And finally, like showing up vulnerable, putting ego aside, being yourself. I think these are absolutely great keys for leaders which should be aspiring to putting into play and trying. So thank you so much for investing the time here with us and sharing your journey and your experience. I'm so grateful for that.
You got it. Thanks a lot, Mike, and all the best. That was fun.
Thank
Uh,
you.
Maybe we do it again in a few years.
I would love to. I would love to. 'Cause I know you'd be on to something else at some point in time too, man.
Yeah.
You don't ever stop. So Phil, thank you so much. And for those
Thank
of you
you.
who are watching and listening along, thank you for joining us. Please feel free to drop your thoughts in the comments below, and we'll see you on the next show. Okay, take care. Cheers.
Thank you. Bye.